Hello, I think we're on live on YouTube now. So hello everybody and welcome to our next EcoFest Eco Conversations. It's brilliant to have you all with us. Our first EcoFest conversation today, I was joined by Councillor Emily Rolls, who talked about the Moss Side Climate Emergency Group and how she has convened and helped to lead that and really encourage residents and local people to have a voice. Now I'm joined by two members of Whalley Range Climate Action Group who have done just that, who are local residents, local people who have come together to form a group to have a voice for their local community. So I'm really delighted to have both Judith and Avril with me today. Welcome to you both.
Hello.
What I'd like to do first is just ask you both, just tell us a bit about yourselves, what's who you are, where you're from, and what's brought you into this sort of way of activism, really, of climate activism. Avril, do you want to go first?
Okay, well, I'm Avril Danchak and I've lived in Whalley Range for many years and worked in Whalley Range for many years. And it's become increasingly obvious, I think, to everybody that the climate is an emergency situation and that it's not happening over there, it's happening here in Whalley Range, and lots of the things that influence life in Whalley Range, including the need for social justice, helping refugees, thinking about our environment, our clean air, the safety of our streets, is something that local residents can do something about. So that's where I come to it from.
Fantastic. And what about yourself, Judith?
Well, I think over a number of years, I've sort of been trying to reduce my own, be aware of climate issues. And for a number of years, I've not run a car or not flown and things like that. And I think it partly came from a wish to live lightly on the planet. And then I sort of got more interested in, it's developed an awareness gradually. And I suppose it partly comes from that I worked in public health, and I do think this is the biggest health threat of our time. And gradually just got to know more and more, take more individual and collective action, learn more. And so getting a climate action group just seemed perfect.
Fantastic, thank you. So let's talk about this climate action group then, Whalley Range Climate Action Group. Tell me a bit about how it started and what it's all about.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk about that a bit. Basically, we've been going, I think, a couple of years, and it's a group of people who want to do what we can to reduce the impact of climate change, both locally and globally. And we want to ensure that the impact of climate change on Whalley Range is managed as well as possible. And we tried to think, what we say is, our sort of motto is think globally, act locally. And as Avril was sort of saying, we realised that social and economic justice is absolutely essential in all this. We're very aware of being a diverse community, wanting to be relevant to everyone. So a lot of our work, particularly before the lockdown, was just trying to talk to as many people as possible, find out how these issues related to them, support them, see what, you know, like we all get together, we try to sort of follow the issues of our heart in relation to all this and support each other. And so we're sort of constantly trying to find, well, what's important to people? Are there other ways of bringing different people on board who might not naturally gravitate towards a group like ours? So we've done such things as we've done some tree planting with the local cricket club. We've also got a project in Zambia we've been involved with that's also, which we support, where they're planting great numbers of trees. We've got an air quality group that goes around with monitors monitoring the air, and we've done quite a lot of work in schools as well. We've done things like film nights, and our latest project, which I think Avril's going to talk a bit more about, is Build Whalley Range Back Better.
Fantastic, thank you, Judy. Is there anything you want to add to that, Avril, about what Whalley Range Climate Action Group is about and how it started?
Yeah, well, it started because I think a lot of people have been aware of climate issues for a long time. I mean, like Judith, I've been minimising or not flying for many years and so on and so forth. But it seemed that we had to go beyond individual actions. It's not just about whether you put your own recycling about and whether you get the bus yourself. It's trying to make more collective and organisational level changes so that things filter out in a much more powerful way. And the conversations we've had with lots of different people have led to us being able to get the climate onto everyone's agenda, if you like. So as a result of that, we've been part of the local voluntary sector and community organisation forum, which is part of the local health network, talking about how to get climate onto everybody's agenda. We've been part of the Alexandra Park 150 celebrations, saying, let's celebrate our local activities. Let's think about making it climate friendly. And as a result of those conversations, we changed some of the debates around, shall we have bottled water, to shall we have a renewable supply of water and a pump and a tap and things like that. So what we've been trying to do is not just do things ourselves, but to try and work with lots of other organisations locally that can make an impact on the planet through what they're doing.
Fantastic, thank you. And I remember, I think I came along to your first Whalley Range Climate Action Group meeting. It's been a while now, hasn't it? About 18 months or something? Something like that? Wow, and I remember it, and I just remember feeling then it felt like a very much a grassroots-led place where we could, work together for our local community, which is absolutely fantastic. And what are the main focuses for the group at the moment, and what are your challenges?
Judith, do you want to start with that, and I'll pick up later.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, in terms of challenges, the lockdown's huge. That, we used to get together, and probably the most important thing we did was eat together and just informally talk. And we did loads of stalls and come to EcoFest. What you've done also has been really amazing for Whalley Range. We've sort of had to find new ways of working using Zoom. We produced a newsletter just before the lockdown. I know Avril's been very busy posting that through doors, doing what we can. But the main thing we've done is two things. We had a study group. That's one of the things that we do so that we could learn ourselves, and we learned all about donut economics. And if anyone's interested, let us know. But this is a way of sort of planning that, whereby you think, how can you do things best locally, and also think about the international situation. How do we do things without harming other places? How do we think about the planet's needs? How do we think about the people's needs? And then the recent thing we've done, which we're really excited about, is we've launched something called Build Whalley Range Back Better, and you came the other night to amazing meeting full of ideas, and and I think, going on from what Avril was saying about, trying to change on an organisational level, is what I was delighted about what came out of that meeting. There's a number of things we can do quite quickly to help organisations that want to think about these things of how do we keep, the wealth within Whalley Range? How do we employ local people? How do we generate more jobs, particularly for those that are going to be most affected by our current situation? How do we make sure those jobs are zero carbon? And we've got, a great group of people now having conversations about these issues. So there are real challenges at the moment and real concerns, given that, climate change isn't on the agenda in the way it needs to be. And I think if in the current situation, it's really up to what local grassroots groups can do, and local organisations, local government, Greater Manchester. These are going to be the areas that actually are going to make the most difference in the current political climate.
Absolutely. Avril, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think the challenges of the lockdown and the virus are very real in terms of getting people together and having conversations in real time. And I think one of the challenges for that for me as well is that it's much harder to make an impact in terms of things. For example, we support the climate strikes for, that on Fridays that the younger people have been having, and that's been difficult to support that and to encourage that, because of course they involve large numbers of people gathering together, which is something that we everybody's discouraged from doing at the moment. Although there is a Climate Strike Action Day coming on September the 25th, and I think we will definitely be in support there. But I think out of some of these challenges of being isolated through lockdown and not being able to meet in person, we've got better at using Zoom, but it's also enabled us to actually get in contact with other climate change organisations in a way. We're much more linked into Friends of the Earth now, and we're linked into other climate change action groups across the Northwest who are doing lots of quite different things. I mean, some of them are doing some things similar to us, but other people are doing more educative type things. So I think it's been helpful in a way to rise to that challenge by contacting other people. And thinking about that locally, there's also a big emphasis on active transport that's come out of lockdown. I think a lot of people were doing a lot more walking and cycling and enjoying their local environment much more. And both nationally and in Chorlton and in Whalley Range, there are walk ride groups coming along who've actually then responded to this business of lockdown with some imaginative responses to the business of cars blocking up our streets. So in Whalley Range, there's been quite a few street closures so that children can play out safely, neighbours can talk to each other safely, and so on. And I think that's been a really useful way of moving forwards through the challenges. And the Whalley Range mutual aid groups, which have got many of the streets in Whalley Range on them, have been a really useful way just to seed some climate friendly ideas through the community. And I think that's been a way that we've been able to respond to some of the challenges, to publicise some of these ways of working, to publicise how important your neighbourhood is and your neighbours are. And I think as a result of that, it's been a massive amount of informal exchange of plants and stuff that people are otherwise throwing out, or of time, people helping each other out with gardening or shopping or other kinds of crises. And I think these kind of developments are really crucial in trying to, partly we need to mitigate our effects on the climate, but we also need to mitigate the effects of global heating on Whalley Range. We'll need to be more self-sufficient. We need to be more content with what we have around us. We need to be more able to work as neighbourhoods and as communities so that we can look after each other and rely on each other and not wait for everything to come in from outside. And we'll talk a bit more about our thoughts about Green New Deal and Build Back Better later on. But I think some of the challenges of lockdown have really helped us to work in a bit more creative way and in a bit more kind of networking way, actually.
Fantastic, thank you, Avril. And yes, I think I did, as Judith said, came to your Whalley Range Build Back Better Zoom meeting a couple of days ago, and it was really inspiring and also empowering to think that we as local people could work and do something quite powerful that could be quite long-term and sustainable. And so my next question would be, how can local residents get involved, and what kind of things are you doing at the moment that you think local residents would really want to get involved with?
Okay, well, we've got a number of ways that you can contact us. We've got a Facebook page, Whalley Range Climate Action Group. Are you going to put these in comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do people access the comments, Grace?
Well, the comments should be on the bottom of the YouTube video. So you will be able to access them from the bottom of the YouTube video, and we'll be tweeting during the day too.
Okay, I know. Well, that's great. Just so that I know. So we've got a Twitter account, and it's @Range Action. So that will be there. People can email me if they're interested in signing up for the group. So that's the email address will be there. And so we've got, within the group, we've got an email list, we've got a WhatsApp group, and we've got 2 meetings coming up. So next Saturday at 11 o'clock is our monthly Whalley Range Climate Action Group, which will be a Zoom meeting. And on the 1st of October at 8 PM is our next Build Whalley Range Back Better meeting. So lots of ways, but please, you know, just feel free to get in touch with me, ring me, text me, email me, and we'll go from there.
Fabulous.
Go on, Avril. Expand on that and say that the group meets regularly to think about where we're headed and all the rest of it, but there's a lot of different ways within that people can get involved. So as Judith mentioned, there's a small group who kind of study and try and learn a bit more about different ways of handling climate change. But there are also little groups that monitor clean air and monitor the pollution and give that information out when we're talking to people. There's a small group that sets up stalls at community events, and we've created some interactive games and things like that to encourage conversations. There's a group that thinks about food and different ways to think about food and eating in more climate friendly ways. There's a group that encourages cycling and relates to the Whalley Range walk ride group. So there are lots of kind of, there's the big group, but there are also these kind of much smaller interest groups which people can work on something that they really feel passionate about within that overall umbrella. And if people come along and say, well, actually, I'm really interested in this aspect of climate change, but you're not doing anything, they'd almost certainly find that somebody within the group would be also interested in that and could help them take things forwards in a local way. Because there's lots of enthusiasm there and people like working with each other, even quite small groups. And that's often a good way to get things done. I personally find if I've got a couple of buddies to help me, that moves things forwards much more quickly, and it's a more enjoyable way to work, really.
Absolutely, I think that's really true, and there's some amazing ways in which local residents can get involved. But we've talked a little bit already. We've mentioned this Build Whalley Range Back Better a couple of times now. I mentioned the meeting that happened the other day. I wondered whether you might want to expand on what that is and what the hopes are for it.
Yeah, well, during lockdown, when we couldn't sort of be out and about, we really started to think about what we needed to have differently after lockdown. And of course, lockdown did give us a bit of a vision of a more local, more peaceful, less carbon emitting way of life. And we started to think about how could we build back better after the lockdown happened. And there is a national movement called Build Back Better. And there's a very interesting website which I'd encourage people to look at. And we've started to think about what that might mean in Whalley Range. And I think it, as a sort of overall thing, our dream for the next 5 years, as it were, is to say that we'd have a proper Green New Deal in Whalley Range, focusing on making sure that we're healthy for the planet and that it's socially just and that there are jobs and resources that everybody can take part in. And that through the Build Back Better process, we can actually start to build this incrementally in our local area. Now, what we've started by doing is thinking, well, what can we actually do? Not just what can we talk about, but what could we make happen? And one of the really interesting ideas that came out of this from one of our young activists called Maeve, who's been involved in thinking economically different from the business as usual, relentless growth kind of model that we've had before, is a concept called community wealth building. And what this concept says is that within a community, within an area, there's money and economic exchange happening. And that if we try to make sure that that economic exchange of money stays much more within the area, we'll be able to increase the wealth of that area. And this is what we're starting to work on at the moment. So recently, we kind of explored what community wealth building might mean in an area as small as Whalley Range. And that means thinking about, well, if you're a small business or a school, what do you spend money on? And could you spend that money in Whalley Range? So just to give an example, one of the things everybody spends money on is utilities and electricity. And at the moment, that is carbon emitting electricity on the whole that comes from outside Whalley Range. Well, we're thinking maybe we could work with the council to get the council to bulk buy green electricity that then people could buy at a lower rate individually from a larger supplier. Maybe we could work with the council to use so many of the buildings that are sitting around in Whalley Range with empty roofs to have solar panels and to have some generating power. So we could actually generate some of our own power within Whalley Range. And this would have lots of good effects. It would be greener, but it would also reduce costs for people who are working in Whalley Range and therefore increase the wealth in the community. So this is the beginning of what we're starting to talk about. And I suppose the other side of that is thinking about how much of our wealth isn't just expressed in money. The wealth in our community goes beyond money. Money is very important, and economic resources in that sense are very important. But we have other wealths that we can share. People can share resources, they can share skills, they can share community involvement, they can share food, they can help each other. And by doing that, we start to improve the quality of life in our area and the meaning of life in our area. And if we're going to move forwards to a more carbon low lifestyle, our own localities have to become richer, more interesting, more entertaining, more socially connected places across the board. And I think the community wealth building is addressing both of those issues and some more issues which I haven't mentioned. So Judith might want to pick up on that in a minute if you've got time.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because on the one hand, that sounds really quite ambitious, but really, really exciting. And I think what's so great about it is, although it sounds, you know, oh my goodness, could we actually do this? Actually, I know from the meeting that we had just the other day, how possible these things are once we get together as, you know, people in communities get together and start using their voice and their passions. Amazing things can happen, and it's a really hopeful sort of prospect, isn't it? Judith, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really exciting and a bit daunting, and we really are going to need to get as many people on board as possible to get these things to happen. I mean, I imagine, like, I think the energy idea is absolutely brilliant, but I'm thinking also, well, what are the jobs that people are going to be able to do? And like one exciting thing we heard recently is there's a local building co-op, eco building co-op, and they're currently training 15 unemployed theatre technicians to do the building work. There's a desperate need for the builders, and that's already happening without us. So I think it's also, you know, like we need to be sort of saying these amazing things are happening. But I think jobs is going to be a really big social justice issue in Whalley Range, and I think social care is a really, really important issue that has really been highlighted by the lockdown. There's loads of social care workers in Whalley Range, unable to do the lovely committed people doing their jobs in the most difficult conditions, people not getting the care that they really need. You know, what can we do about all those types of issues? So, you know, I'm really, really keen at the moment to find out from local people, well, what's your burning need? You know, can we make sure there are as many jobs in Whalley Range for the people that need them, that don't burn carbon and that people want to do? And in the jargon, you know, we're supporting what we're calling a rainbow Green New Deal, which is, we love the Green New Deal, but it's a little bit limited in the kinds of jobs it has, and we want you know, all the zero carbon jobs, the arts, jobs in the arts, jobs in social care and things, as well as the sort of retrofitting jobs and things like that. So, and hopefully to include everybody. That's the idea of the rainbow.
Yeah,
sounds fantastic. Thank you.
There are even some very practical suggestions, for example, which I won't go into detail about, but how we could grow more food in Whalley Range. There's a lot of places we could grow food in Whalley Range, and people have to eat, and it would be really great if that was happening as locally to us as possible. And there are challenges around that, but there are many ways in which we could build on what we already have and the expertise we already have. There's already over 100 volunteer gardeners involved in a local resource at the Carlton Club, for example. So there's lots of ways we could do some really interesting and enjoyable and socially useful, socially just and socially entertaining things, which would make us all feel wealthier without us necessarily having more stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much potential here, isn't there? It's fantastic. So my last question to you both: dream, if you could dream 5 years from now, what would Whalley Range look like?
Go first, Judith.
Thank you. Well, I think one of the things that's come out of the lockdown is the need for everybody to have access to green space. I really feel for those people in flats with no green space. So our green space is precious. We need to make sure that people have access to it. We need to make sure there's enough trees on it. We need to make sure that the jobs and the money is as equally distributed as possible, what we've got. We need to make every decision as ecologically good as possible, that to be the easy decisions, not like now. So moving from, say, car ownership to much more sharing, and the possibilities are endless. And you know, I think the sort of community stuff that Avril's been talking about, really, really central to it all.
Fantastic. What about you, Avril? What would you add to that?
Well, in 5 years' time, I'd like to see every roof with a solar panel on it. I'd like to see everybody who's working in Whalley Range living within walking or cycling distance of Whalley Range, so there's a lot less commuting. I'd like to see all the buildings that are publicly shared, like schools, health centres, faith organisations, all these kind of places, also being used as little nodes and centres for the arts, for performance. I'd like to see people knowing for certain that every week or every month there would be a bring and share meal in their street or in their mini neighbourhood or in their church or whatever it is, to bring people together, and that every day people can bring and share a cup of tea and be talking to each other and enjoying each other. And that this creativity of local people would be totally harnessed and spread around locally. So that's my vision. And also that vision would be making a big impact on the city council, on the region as a whole, and being seen as a bit of a beacon across the nation. But I think that's a bit too ambitious, perhaps.
Oh, I think you should dream big. It sounds amazing. And we should dream big, couldn't we? Why can't we do that in Whalley Range? It would be amazing. Avril and Judith, we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank you both for everything that you've shared with us today. If people want to get involved, Judith has mentioned a couple of ways, and we'll put those in the comments. They do have a Twitter account @Range Action and a Facebook account, and I'll make sure all those details are below, or you can just contact us and I'll make sure we're getting you connected with people. It's fantastic to talk to you both, and keep up the good work. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.